In the winter of 1959, a group of experienced hikers set out on a journey into the Ural Mountains of Soviet Russia. They were led by Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student, and they had big plans to reach the summit of a mountain called Otortan. But their expedition would soon become one of the most mysterious and chilling events in the history of mountaineering. The expectation would soon become one of the most mysterious and chilling events in the history of mountaineering. So at the end of the trip, the group, all members of the Ural Polytechnic Institute, consisted of 9 hikers. They were seasoned mountaineers and skiers, familiar with the harsh conditions of the Russian wilderness. It was supposed to be a relatively routine trip. They left on January 27th, and the goal was to travel about 200 miles through snow-covered terrain, cross a series of passes, and eventually make it to their destination. They were expected to return by February 12th. However, on February 20th, when the group failed to return, a search party was dispatched. What they found at Dyatlov Pass would go on to captivate the world's imagination for decades. The hiker's tent was found, but it wasn't like any ordinary campsite. The tent had been cut open from the inside, and it looked as though the group had fled in a hurry. There was no sign of a struggle, but it was clear that something had caused them to panic. Their belongings, including shoes, coats, and other gear, were left behind in the snow. As the search continued, the bodies of the hikers were found scattered across the slopes of the mountain. Some were found in the forest, some were further away, and one body was found in a ravine. What was most disturbing about their deaths was the nature of their injuries. Some of them had broken ribs and skull fractures, injuries similar to those caused by a high-speed car crash. But the odd part was that there were no external wounds. All their skin was perfectly intact. No blood was found in the snow. One of the hikers, Lyudmila Dubinina, had her eyes and tongue removed. This detail sparked wild speculation. How could this happen to a group of experienced hikers in the dead of winter on a routine trip? As the investigation continued, more strange discoveries were made. Some of the hikers' clothes were found to be contaminated with radioactive material, which led to further questions. What could explain this? Could they have been exposed to something dangerous, perhaps a secret Soviet military experiment? Some even considered the possibility that the group had stumbled upon something they weren't meant to see, which led to their tragic end. But it wasn't just the injuries and the radioactive contamination that puzzled investigators. The condition of the bodies and the way they were found seemed to suggest that the hikers had been in a state of panic. They had fled the tent without proper clothing, and they appeared to be in a frantic rush. But why? What could have caused them to leave their shelter in such a hurry in temperatures well below freezing? Several theories have been put forward to explain what happened that night. One of the first ideas was that the hikers were the victims of an avalanche. Some of them had been found far from the tent, which could suggest they'd been buried by a snowslide. But when investigators checked the area, there were no signs of an avalanche. The snow had been undisturbed, and the slopes didn't seem to have conditions conducive to such a disaster. Then there was the theory that the hikers had been involved in some sort of military incident. The radioactive contamination found on their clothes fueled this idea. Some believe they were caught in the middle of a secret Soviet weapons test, or that they accidentally came across something that was never meant to be seen. The Soviet government was known to be conducting experiments in the area at the time, and some felt the hikers might have been exposed to dangerous chemicals or radiation. Another theory that gained attention in more recent years was the possibility of infrasound. Infrasound is low-frequency sound that is below the range of human hearing, but it can have a profound effect on the body. It's being known to cause feelings of anxiety, panic, and confusion. Some researchers believe that the hikers could have been exposed to infrasound generated by the wind, which may have led them to experience irrational behavior. The theory suggests that infrasound could have induced a state of panic that caused the hikers to flee the tent in a disoriented state. There are also more unusual and extreme theories, such as the idea that the hikers were attacked by a yeti or some other unknown creature. While there is no evidence to support this, the strange injuries, missing body parts, and the bizarre circumstances of the incident have led some to entertain this idea. Could the hikers have been the victims of something paranormal or unexplained? But perhaps the most widely accepted theory today is that the hikers were victims of an avalanche, although there are still unanswered questions. Some experts believe the avalanche theory makes the most sense, considering the injuries, the panic, and the evidence found at the scene. An avalanche might have forced them to leave the tent in a hurry, and the injuries could be the result of being struck by debris. But the lack of clear avalanche signs and the strange details, like the missing body parts and radiation, make it difficult to settle on one explanation. What we do know is that the Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of the most perplexing mysteries in modern history. Despite numerous investigations, theories, and even re-examinations of the case, no one has ever been able to definitively explain what happened to those 9 hikers. In February of 1959, the case was officially closed by Soviet authorities in 1959, but it has remained a subject of intrigue for decades. In recent years, there have been new attempts to reopen the investigation with fresh perspectives and modern technology being applied to the case. Still, the mystery remains unsolved. Some say that the hikers were simply the victims of a tragic accident, while others continued to search for answers, exploring every theory from the plausible to the bizarre. But one thing is certain: the Dyatlov Pass incident will continue to capture our imagination for years to come, leaving us wondering what truly happened on that fateful night in the Ural Mountains. And so, the mystery endures.